obesity what I'm hearing you say, obesity is a big factor to mental health stresses and brain stresses. Is
And
that
Alzheimer's
correct?
disease.
And Alzheimer's.
Yeah,
Obesity.
I mean, it all sort of goes
Right.
together, from depression to problems in school to memory problems later in life.
What's your thought? I mean, I'm all for people loving themselves for where they're at in their life, and loving their bodies for where they're at, and not shaming themselves, and the self-love movement of accepting yourself for where you are. But that's only going to hurt our brains if we're not actually saying, okay, I accept and love myself where I'm at and the decisions I've made to be here, but I've got to start working on these things. Otherwise, there's going to be some challenges emotionally, mentally, anxiety, depression, if I don't work on it, right? My health.
The don't worry, be happy people die the earliest from accidents and preventable illnesses. And I want people to love themselves. But doing the right thing is an act of love. Like, if you're really unhealthy, walking is an act of love. And so it sort of catches me in this funny place.
Yeah.
I remember I was on a plane once, and I'd figure out this connection between, as your weight goes up, the size and function of your brain goes down. And I was sitting next to someone who was very overweight, and we were on a tiny plane going to Des Moines, Iowa for public television. And in my head, I'm like, oh, you want to talk to her about that? And then I talk to myself all the time. It's like, no, you don't want to say anything. Don't need to upset her day. And but then I went to Pittsburgh, and I went to GNC, the supplement company. And one of my core values is being authentic. So I live the message of my life. And the message of GNC is health.
Yes.
And their number 3 guy, their marketing director, took me to dinner, was morbidly obese.
Really?
And that thought in my head is, you should talk to him about this. And he made the comment, he opened the conversation. He's like, I don't know why I'm overweight, but my numbers are okay. And I'm like,
what
Tom.
numbers?
And I'm like, Tom, you don't want to be a dinosaur. Because I had figured out, big body, little brain, you're going to become extinct. And we had this great conversation, because my favorite verse in the New Testament is John 8:32. Know the truth, and the truth will set you free. I'm like, do you not want to be like the number 2 guy or the number 1 guy? You're not going to do that if your brain's not healthy. And that conversation, the next year, he lost 80 pounds.
Wow.
Most people don't know that this is a serious health, mental health, brain health risk. And I just want to tell people the truth. And I want them to get healthy. And people go, but I don't like one of my NFL players, but I don't like any of the foods that are healthy for me. And I'm like, none, not one. And we did this great exercise. And it turned out he liked like 70 of the foods that were healthy. Like, you only want to love food that loves you back.
Interesting.
It's a relationship,
Yeah.
right? I don't know if you've ever been in a bad relationship, but I've been in a bad relationship. I was in a 20-year marriage with someone who didn't like me very much. I'm never going to do that again. I'm just not. It's a boundary for me. And I'm damn sure not going to be in a relationship, the bad relationship with food. I want to be in a good relationship.
Yeah.
I mean, I love food. I just want it to love me back.
What are the 5 foods that we should have to help our brain the most?
Salmon, wild salmon, blueberries, walnuts, olive or avocado oil. Healthy protein, chocolate. I make this great brain-healthy hot chocolate every night for my family.
Really? What is
I just look at the 6 of them that live at home. I'm like, okay, who's up for it tonight? So Costco, of all places, organic, vanilla, unsweetened almond milk, raw cacao. It's a superfood. So organic raw cacao. And a little bit of Sweet Leaf is a company that makes flavored stevia. They make chocolate flavored stevia and put it in the blender, heat it up. It's phenomenal. Good for me. I love it. And it loves me back.
It loves you back. So salmon, blueberries, walnuts, avocado or avocado oil, raw chocolate are some of the top favorite foods for the brain.
For the brain.
Why are these foods? Is it high in antioxidants? Is it proteins that they have?
Blueberry, it's the phytonutrients. They've actually done studies showing cognitive enhancement with blueberry juice. Salmon, it's the omega-3 fatty acids and the complete protein. Avocados, it's the healthy fat, especially omega-3 fatty acids. Same with walnuts. Your brain is fat. Low-fat diets are bad for your brain. People who go on low-fat diets actually have an increased incidence of depression.
Really?
Yeah. So now you don't want bad fats, fried fats particularly. You want healthy fats, avocados, nuts and seeds, green leafy vegetables.
Olive oil is that in there?
Olive oil, avocado oil, macadamia nut oil.
Yeah. So how much food should the brain have? Is it, it's our buddy Dave Asprey talks about fasting a lot. A lot of people are in this fasting craze. If we're not giving the brain food or nutrients for a day, 3 days, 5 days, does that help the brain? Does it reset the brain? Does it hurt the brain?
So intermittent fasting, where you go 12 to 16 hours from dinner to breakfast or lunch, is good. They've actually found there's a term called autophagy, where your brain begins to clean up some of the trash.
So it works on the brain too, not just in the
It
fat
works
cells
on
in
the
body.
brain as well. Now, I grew up Roman Catholic, and long suffering was one of the gifts, and I never got that one. I'm not a fan of long suffering.
Yes.
I'm not doing a marathon. It's like way too much stress for my brain, and I'm not fasting for 3 days, but I can go 12 hours. I mean, like, that's not a big deal, and it helps people lose weight. It helps them be healthy. And I come from a family of fat people. My dad used to hate when I would say that. But I have a brother who's 150 pounds overweight, despite me loving him, nudging him. And you just have to be thoughtful. Know your vulnerability in Bright Minds. The G is genetics. So know what you're genetically vulnerable to. And, I have to work on it.
Right. How you mentioned you don't do marathons. If you're not traumatizing the brain through contact sports, but you're an endurance junkie, you love to run marathons, you run them every year, you do triathlons, you do ultra marathons, you're doing mountain climbing. Are these activities good for the brain to put some extreme stress on it, even if it's not physical contact to the brain? Or does it long-term hurt the brain?
The scans I have of extreme athletes are not good.
Really?
Yeah. I think it's too much stress for the brain. I love HIIT training, high intensity training. That's been shown to increase mitochondria in cells. I'm not a fan of putting your body under a lot of stress. It's just not good for it. Some stress is good. We call it eustress. A little bit, so your fibers grow. That's why weight training is important. The stronger you are as you age, less likely you are to have Alzheimer's disease.
Really?
But you want to love your brain. You want to make sure you're sleeping for your brain. That's the S in Bright Minds.
So if someone's like, you know what? Okay, I hear what you're saying, but I really love to do a marathon or two a year, and a few times in my life I want to do, I want to climb Everest or something like that. I want to do something to challenge myself.
And I go, awesome.
Is that going to hurt the brain long term?
It's not going to, if you're doing everything else right. So one of my NFL players just signed an $80 million deal.
Wow.
So he's going to play.
He's
going to play. But if you're going to do something that is potentially damaging to the brain, make sure you're doing everything else right. So, for example, being a firefighter is a brain damaging profession. We need to own that. Just like we need to own playing football as a brain-damaging profession. It's like, own it. Everybody knows it. Now, when I started my work in 2007, very few people know it. Now, everybody knows it. But they don't know that being a firefighter, because there are heroes. Those are the people we need when we need them, and we need them healthy. But because of the toxins they breathe, because of the emotional trauma they see day in and day out, because of the head traumas they experience, they have a higher incidence of depression, a higher incidence of suicide, and a higher incidence of early death. We should not be okay with this. But it doesn't mean we're not going to have firefighters. What it means is we should put their brain in a rehabilitative environment all the time. We should be teaching them about brain health, like with NFL players. Currently, we should be teaching them, look, if you're going to do this, own it. It's a brain-damaging sport, so let's just do everything else right.
What are the other things right that you talk about? Are a few main keys? Is it nutrition? Is it sleep?
If we think about Bright Minds, it's just such a good model. So blood flow, B is blood flow, so exercise, and foods like beets that increase blood flow, or supplements like ginkgo that increase blood flow. The R is retirement and aging. New learning is absolutely critical. Your work in studying greatness, you're always learning something new, which is great for the brain.
Retirement plus aging, is that what you said?
Retirement and aging.
So continuing to learn in those stages.
And always putting yourself in an anti-aging environment. So the food you eat, the exercise, new learning, being passionate, never retiring, right? I mean, maybe you go and do something else you like better because you have enough money, but never retirement, because when you start not doing things, your brain actually starts to disconnect itself.
So when someone retires at 60, 70, 75, and they say, I'm just going to sit on the beach for the next however long, enjoy my family time, enjoy the money I've had, and relax. What happens to those people if they don't have a purposeful mission in their life beyond relaxation? What happens? Or what
their brain disconnects itself. Really? They have a higher incidence of dementia. And my dad worked until he died when he was almost 91. And he's like, when my friends retire, they die.
Really?
And now, if you retire, because you really didn't love what you were doing anyways, and you go off and do something you love, maybe not golf, because you're around all those toxins on the green, maybe not golf, but if you're doing things you love and you're always learning, well, that's awesome. That's a really good thing.
So you can retire from your job, don't retire from your life.
Don't retire from your life.
Stay connected in some meaningful pursuit.
Absolutely critical to keeping young. And then the I is inflammation. This is the big bad actor, because inflammation in your body, which comes from eating processed foods, one of the surprising things comes from gum disease. If you're not a flosser, you need to floss. I'm a flossing fool.
I do twice a day.
I wasn't that way until I started reading the studies that people who have gum disease have a higher incidence of heart disease, but also a higher incidence of brain disease. They actually found gum bacteria higher in the brains of people with Alzheimer's disease. And so omega-3 fatty acids decrease inflammation, fruits and vegetables decrease inflammation, flossing, and probiotics, getting your gut healthy. There's this huge connection between the brain and the gut, because inflammation often comes from having an unhealthy gut, either from infections or the lousy food that you're eating. And the G is genetics. You need to know your vulnerability, but genes aren't a death sentence. What they should be is a wake-up call to know what you're vulnerable to. My I have heart disease and obesity in my family. I don't have heart disease and I'm not obese. Why? Because I'm always on a prevention program. You just want to be serious as soon as you know what your risks are.
Right. Okay.
H is head trauma, which we talked about. Brain is soft, skull is hard. There are 3 million new head injuries every year in the United States. This is a big deal.
Wait, 3 million new head injuries? Is that
Every year.
Is that from car accidents or
Falls.
sports, falls, everything?
Everything.
Wow.
You know, being hit,
Domestic violence, whatever it might be, anything. Gunshot, whatever.
whatever. 3 million.
3 million.
Which means most people live over the last 30 years. That's 90 million people in the United States who struggle with the effects of traumatic brain injury. Very high in prison populations, very high in people who struggle with psychiatric diseases. And then T is toxins. And so you go, what can I do to support my brain? Well, one, avoid them. Alcohol is not a health food. My biggest blog last year was titled, I Told You So. And when I dated my wife, Tana, I think you met my wife, she's awesome. And when we were dating, she said...
Your current wife.
My current
Not
wife.
the 20 year.
Not the 20 year. She said, I'll never tell you I told you so. She lied. She just flat out lied to me. It's like her favorite thing to say. But I've been telling people ever since I started imaging, alcohol's not a health food. And our first clinic was right next to the Napa Valley, so it was not a popular thing to say. But it's just what I saw. And then there's a study from Johns Hopkins that say people who drink every day have smaller brains.
Wow.
And then last year, the American Cancer Society came out and said any alcohol is associated with an increased risk in cancer. 7 different cancers.
Any alcohol.
Any alcohol.
Man, that
and
hurt.
so my
Every
blog,
wine drinker is saying, no, you're wrong. No, I'm not listening to this right now. What about a glass once or twice a week? What about the nutrients from the grapes?
Again,
All
if
these
you're going to
things.
do something that's bad for your brain, you should be doing other things that are good for your brain, right? It doesn't mean you can never have a drink, but just know it's not a healthful thing to do. So you want to do the other things.
Yeah, like when I eat a bowl of ice cream and pizza, I know it's not helping my brain.
Right. And if you do it once a month, it's like not the biggest deal in the world. But then, because here we're talking about T for toxins, you want to support the 4 organs of detoxification. So your kidneys drink more water, your gut eat more fiber. In my shake every morning, I put fiber in it. For your liver, kill the alcohol and eat detoxifying vegetables. They're called brassicas, Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, broccoli, kale. And take infrared saunas. People who take the most saunas have the lowest incidence of Alzheimer's disease.
Really?
Because it detoxifies you. And it's also, there's actually a study in the Journal of the American Medical Association. People with major depression took 1 infrared sauna, their mood was better. Well, how cool is that? I mean, that's like simple. There's no side effects mostly to taking a 25-minute sauna.
So is it infrared or any type of sauna?
Well, it's probably any type of sauna,
Right.
but the study was on infrared.
Infrared, gotcha.
saunas.
But anything that's releasing the toxins, any heat exposure,
And
not too
sweat.
much. Yeah,
Sweating with
Working
exercise or saunas is detoxifying for you.
Yeah.
And this isn't hard, right? Like not one thing I've said so far is hard. The M in Bright Minds is mental health. This is where you learn to kill the ants and tame the dragons. So ANT stands for automatic negative thoughts, the thoughts that come into your mind automatically and ruin your day. And the exercise is super simple. Whenever you feel sad or mad or nervous or out of control, write down what you're thinking. And then just ask yourself if it's true. You don't have to believe every stupid thing you think. I didn't learn that till I was 28 years old. I'm in class. I'm a psychiatric resident at Walter Reed in Washington, D.C. And I'm like, no shit. I don't have to believe the noise in my head. It's like thoughts come from your genes, right? They're actually written into your genes. You're a failure, maybe because your grandfather had to file for bankruptcy. They come from your parents talking to you. They come from your siblings. I'm one of 7. They come from the noise. They come from your coaches. And they lie. Just because you have a thought has nothing to do with whether or not it's true.
Absolutely.
And
I was working with a therapist recently that said just because someone tells you something about yourself doesn't mean, and they're trying to give you this thing, doesn't mean you need to receive that gift. It's not a gift you need to receive. They're offering you a gift that's a bad gift, doesn't mean you need to take it. You can just say, okay, I don't need that gift right now. I don't need to let that thought sink in and believe this. And I think, I'll speak for myself, growing up, anytime I heard someone say, you suck, you're dumb, you're an idiot, you're not enough, you'll never amount to whatever, I learned to believe those things. And I think a lot of us probably learn to believe whatever we hear from anyone, whether it was a side comment or a direct comment. And how have you learned over the years to really defend against those ants? Like, besides, someone might say, okay, I tried writing it down, that this is not true, and analyzing this, but how can we really show up for ourselves so our thoughts don't consume us in a negative way?
so you know that if you're overweight on Monday and you have a salad, you are not going to be trim on Friday.
Right.
That you need to develop practices,
Yes.
right? That getting well physically is a discipline that occurs over and over time, right? To be mentally well, you need to develop practices that you do, like eating well, over and over and over. So, for example, I start every day with today is going to be a great day. As soon as my feet hit the floor in the morning, and today was easier because I spent last night in Santa Monica and walked on the beach this morning, and I get to hang out with you. Today is going to be a great day. That way, my unconscious mind finds why it's going to be a great day. And then your brain is always listening. I talk about taming the hopeless and helpless dragon, the dragon from the past that feeds depression. And it's something I do called positivity bias training. I want to get my brain looking for what's right because it automatically goes for what's wrong.
Yeah.
And so I start every day with today is going to be a great day. And then if I have a hard time, if I feel sad or mad or nervous or out of control, I write down what I'm thinking. And then I just go, is it true? And there's a whole bigger method in the book. And often I'll go to, what's the opposite of that thought? No one loves me, or no one respects me, or you're a failure. And so quickly my brain, if I go, my wife never listens to me, I've had that thought, I'll go, well, I never listen to my wife. And I'll be like, oh, that can be true. Or she does listen to me, and then I find the times it's just I don't believe what goes on in my head. And then when I go to bed at night, and this is so powerful, I say a prayer, and then I go, what went well today? And I put myself to sleep by reviewing the positive things that happened that day. And I find the little micro moments, whether it's that sip of hot chocolate that I made that I'm proud of myself for, or some cool text or interaction. And it sets my dreams up to be more positive. I want to protect my pleasure centers because pleasure in many ways can be the enemy of happiness.
Really?
Because if you have too much, it wears them out and then you begin to feel flat. And that's how addictions start.